Well, welcome back to Friday Live. This is, geez, Mike, this is my first Friday Live in a couple of weeks.
We
Had,
missed you.
well, thank you. I hope everyone else missed me as well. I was on vacation last week and had some other travels at various places. But as you know, I love to do it. I love to be here for our audience and both the folks that watch us on a regular basis and the new folks that join us each week. Of course, this is Friday Live, as I had mentioned. This is HPK Provident and Advisors. Every Friday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we jump on a broadcast here on Facebook and talk a little bit about the markets, a good bit about the markets. There's a lot going on, a few planning ideas. We're certainly open to any thoughts or questions that you have that we can incorporate into Friday Live. Um, so send those along to us. It's important to note that there's nothing that we're talking about should be seen or viewed as a specific recommendation for your situation. All the financial planning is very personalized. Everybody is unique and their wants, needs, and their preferences in their financial life. So we very much encourage you not to take any action in your financial life on the things that we're talking about, but these are things to consider to incorporate in your overall thought process. You really do need to work with a qualified financial professional, qualified tax professional, as well as a qualified legal professional to get those specific recommendations. So these are just some thoughts and ideas and our observations. Mike, I thought today we'd start out with this day in history.
Okay. What
I'm
do you got?
somewhat of a I'm somewhat of a history buff. Everybody says they're a history buff. I guess I'm certainly not on the spectrum of like a history professor, but I enjoy it. And I don't know if history repeats itself, but it often rhymes. So there were a couple things that I thought I would make mention of that occurred on August 11th. Of course, this is August 11th, 2023. August 11th of 2014 is when Robin Williams died. I am a huge Robin Williams fan. I think his work, both on the comedy side and even more, some of his more serious works were extraordinary. Mrs. Doubtfire is one of my favorite movies. It makes me giggle the entire time. It is a little bit poignant as well. So that was in 2014, 8 years ago, and time goes by quickly. And from a planning perspective, we just want to, remind folks that life comes at us quickly. Make sure that you have everything prepared all along the way. And everything that we do in financial planning, as we say all the time, is short-term sacrifice, long-term gain. So take the short-term sacrifice of making sure your wills are updated. You got general power of attorney, durable power of attorney, if it fits for you. Your healthcare directives, and some of you, it might make sense to have irrevocable, which means you can't change trusts, or revocable trusts, which means you can change them. Those are ways to protect the things that you have. Those are the ways to make sure that no matter what goes on in life, that your wishes will be fulfilled. So keep those things in mind from a planning perspective. But I personally miss Robin Williams' work, and I thought he was an extraordinary artist. Now, speak of artists, I also found this one to be fascinating. Today, many people can make an argument that today is the 50th birthday of hip hop music. April 11th, 1973, there was a gentleman who grew up in Jamaica. His name was Clive Campbell. He went by most people would know him as DJ Kool Herc. And what DJ Kool Herc was doing was he was at his sister's birthday party on April 11th in the Bronx, April 11th of 1973. And although he had been doing this privately and for small groups for a while, this was the largest audience, evidently, that he had performed for. He introduced the two turntable system at that party, and it just exploded from there. So 50 years, and again, what an incredible genre of music that is really a force in the entertainment world. From a planning perspective, could Clive Campbell have known 50 years ago that what he was doing at his sister's birthday party was going to explode into an incredible industry. Um, Probably not. From a planning perspective, though, for you folks that are have great ideas, or business owners, or developing a business, plan for your success. Go ahead and get those things into place. Take the short-term sacrifice, the long-term gain of saying, "Hey, this is going to be really big sometime. How do I, make sure that I am in a position to reap the rewards of my success?" I don't know what DJ Kool Herc's financial planning was in 1973, but again, I don't think at his sister's birthday party he thought that hip hop would become what it has, such an incredible genre of music, and there's a lot of money involved in it. So those are our two little planning tips. It's make sure you have things set up for whatever life brings you. To include, have things set up to enjoy great success in the future. I had seen a study that there are this was a while ago, and they said, let's look at successful people, and let's just talk about or let's figure out what their common characteristics was. This study's probably 20 years old, and they looked at some wealthy people around the country, and they came up with three characteristics. One was they had advanced education. Now, advanced education could be within your field. It could be degrees. It could be going back to school for whatever your field is, whether that be trade school, whether that be graduate school, whatever it is, it's advanced education. It's more education than the average person in your field. That was one. Two, I thought was interesting, and I think we're going to see a lot of this into the future because we have a lot more people in this category, is military service. They were used to structure, and they had made sacrifices over time and understood what those sacrifices meant ultimately. So one was higher advanced education, I should say. Two was military service. The three was the most common and is the most important, and is something that I hope people gravitate to. At that time of that study of successful people based on wealth, the most common characteristic was they had written goals. They wrote down what they wanted their life to look like. And that's a great deal of what we do. We do that through our financial plans. We help people have a written version of what they want to happen into the future. And we plan for those contingencies. So that's a little bit of what went on in history, Mike.
Okay.
So let's segue from history to what's going on right now. So talk to us a little bit. There's been an incredible amount of market data that you're intaking and digesting, and ultimately making decisions on behalf of our clients' portfolios. So talk to us about some of those, if you would.
Yeah, the big economic news this week was the inflation data. We got the CPI report yesterday, and then the
Wait, is
PPI
there
report.
inflation? There's inflation out there?
There is still inflation. It is coming down. So the headline CPI number, the consumer price index, came in at 3.2% versus last month's 3% reading and consensus of 3.3, I believe. So a little lower than consensus, but higher than last month. And that's just kind of more of the year over year numbers, what we're comparing them to. On a monthly basis, it came in exactly in line with expectations and the prior month at 0.2%. Now, if you strip out the food and energy, which were both up on the month, it also came in. That doesn't really make sense, but it also came in at 2%, which was in line with consensus and last month. Now, that did continue to tick lower from the previous reading. So that came in at 4.7 from last month's 4.8%, which was also consensus. So that number continues to go down. Initially, the market loved it, had a big rally in the morning, which topped out at 10 o'clock, and then they just kind of gave back all those gains, unfortunately.
That's a pretty quick rally.
Yeah, the market's pretty sensitive to economic data right now, just what it means for the Fed. Today, we're seeing a little bit of a sell-off, more so in the NASDAQ. NASDAQ's down about a little over 1%. Not as bad in the S&P, and the Dow's kind of right around the flat line for the day. Now, PPI did come in a little hotter than expected. That's the producer price index. That came in a tenth higher than expectations at 0.3%, but they're still coming down on a year-over-year basis. It's I don't think anything today or yesterday is really going to change what the Fed's going to do in September. we'll still have one more jobs data, and we'll still have one more inflation reading. So right now, we're just, like I said, the market's a little sensitive. We're in the midst of a small pullback. It's still more of a routine pullback. I think the S&P is down about 3% off the highs. Nasdaq's down about 5.5% off the highs. We're still overall, we haven't violated the uptrend that we're in. So in good shape, but we did get some bank downgrades from Moody's. I think they downgraded 10 banks. So that kind of spooked the market a little earlier in the week, and then it just kind of continued from there.
Those banks were mostly regional banks. I mean, we're not talking about
small and mid-size for the most part. They did say that they may add some more to that list, but everyone's kind of saying, they're kind of late to the party on this. Like, we already had the banking crisis.
So the downgrade means, they're not quite as, they're not as healthy as we thought, but they're not dead, right?
Yeah. I guess the downgrade came because of higher funding costs and potential for commercial real estate weakness in the coming quarters, most likely.
Right.
But that could take a while to play out. And that is more targeted to the small and mid-sized banks. Right. The larger ones don't really have as much exposure there.
Right. And that idea being, if you're a business owner and you're going to put up, you want to buy a new building to store some equipment or whatever, not most often, but often enough, those folks are going to the smaller and kind of regional banks as opposed to the big name banks, right? I mean, that's kind of the idea, and therefore they have more of that commercial exposure. Okay.
That's pretty much all I got. Speaking of small business, we did get the survey data there earlier in the week, and that came in slightly above expectations. So that really underpins the labor dynamics. That's most of the people that hire workers, the small businesses. So that remains healthy. So job market for now remains healthy, even though we did see a slight uptick in jobless claims that came out yesterday. I think we're at 245, still relatively overall low level, but did increase. I think we were closer to the 220,000 range in the prior week.
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. You're talking about the Federal Reserve, and obviously they influence a lot of what goes on in the markets, the economy, in the world, quite frankly. So I'll put you on the spot. They have an incredible amount of data that they look at on a regular basis. Do you have any sense of all those things that they're looking at, inflation and jobs market, money flow, and probably 100 others. Do you have any sense on the top few that they're really keeping their eye on that may or may not sway their decisions?
CPI is definitely a big one, and the PCE deflator. But I think they're really going to keep an eye on what commodity prices do in the coming months. We have seen a slight uptick in the overall commodity basket, and that's largely driven by what crude oil is doing. So if we stay at these levels and inch a little higher, that could keep them on edge and make it more likely that they'll raise again in September. But I still think September is probably an open meeting at this point. It could go either way. They could skip it and potentially go in November, or we could be at the end. It just kind of depends on what inflation does in the coming months.
All right.
But I think we're close to the end of the Fed rate hiking cycle. So that's a relief for the market. Then it'll be moved to more, how long are they going to remain at those elevated levels before they start to cut interest rates?
Yeah, and those cycles, continue to go and will continue throughout history. People have a lot of votes on if they keep hiking, then they're saying, well, inflation's out of control, and then that's kind of negative. But, a lot of people get more money on their savings as well. Right. So, we can make some lemonade out of some of these lemons. And then other people will say, well, if they're done hiking, they keep them elevated for a while, and then we get into some cycle at some point in the future where they're going to cut rates, and everybody says, oh my gosh, they're worried, they got to cut rates. And so we're going to have all of that. And, thankfully, Mike is, like I said, bringing in and interpreting this data and acting on it and on the best interest of our clients on a regular basis. So what would you, I'll put you on the spot again. Yeah. What's your ideal Fed meeting in September? What do they come out and say and do?
I would love to see a pause. I would love to
Yeah.
for them to just say, we're probably done. Um, I think that's a very low probability, even if that is their intention, because they don't want to inflate future inflation expectations.
Right.
Um, and by keeping rate hikes on the table, that kind of curbs people's um, opinion of where inflation may go.
Right. 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 All right. Fair enough. I like it. Any other thoughts, Mike? Anything else you want to add to Friday Live here on August 11th, 2023?
No, I think that's it for me this week.
Well, fair enough. And I think we're going to wrap it up as well. Thank you for joining us. And again, it's every Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to us. Our office number is 724-463-1331 with offices here right outside of Pittsburgh and in Sarasota, Florida, where Mike is actually. So feel free to contact us directly about your specific situation. And, I'll kind of wrap it up with what I started with. Have that written plan, those written goals. I think you will be amazed, whether it be personal, whether that be professional, whether that be financial goals. Write them down, keep them handy, review them on a regular basis, and we can certainly help in that regard on the financial side. So everybody have a great weekend. Mike, thanks so much for your input, and we'll catch up with everybody next Friday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Everybody
All
be
right.
safe.
Have a good
Bye now.
weekend.